Welcome to the Nature of Things. I'm David Suzuki. Tonight we bring you two fascinating but very different reports. One is on fire, a longtime friend that can be an enemy. The other is on the cormorant, a bird with a reputation it doesn't deserve. This is a Pacific cormorant. Sea life populations, birds, fish, plants along our coasts are exquisitely integrated and balanced. Human activity often imposes severe stresses on such an ecosystem. And when one species competes with us for the same resource, we often try to eliminate our competitors. Take cormorants. They're such efficient fishers that the Japanese actually use them to catch food fish. But some North American fishermen blame cormorants for their declining catches. Tonight we'll take a look at this fascinating bird from a very different perspective.
To the ancient Egyptians, a messenger from the underworld. In European folklore, a symbol of greed. Also known as shag, sea raven, fish hog. The cormorant has a dark reputation. In many places, including Atlantic Canada, the cormorant's fishing skills are the source of its notoriety. Cormorants feed in the shallow coastal waters worked by fishermen. Many people consider the birds a serious pest, disturbing fishing gear and eating too many valuable fish. At their nesting colonies, cormorants are extremely vulnerable to human persecution, and in eastern North America, they were virtually exterminated by 1900. Legal protection has allowed a slow recovery, but successfully raising a new generation of young can still be an uncertain and perilous undertaking. At the end of March, cormorants start to flock to their nesting colonies in Atlantic Canada. An early start allows some margin for setbacks during the short summer breeding season. This remote island off Nova Scotia is free of predatory mammals and within flying distance of rich fishing grounds, an ideal sanctuary for a nesting colony. Adult males are the first to arrive. They choose a nest site, often one from the previous year, and perform an advertising display. Females are attracted to the male's display. Raising young is a demanding cooperative effort, and birds will inspect each other carefully before choosing their mates. Two species of cormorants inhabit eastern North America. Both breed in Atlantic Canada. But this species, the Great Cormorant, is quite rare here. The Great Cormorant stands almost a meter tall and has a distinctive white throat strap. It inhabits many regions of the Old World, but in North America breeds only along the Atlantic coast, from Labrador south to the Gulf of Maine. Great cormorants number only 5,000 breeding pairs in North America. The slightly smaller size and orange facial skin identifies the double-crested cormorant. This adaptable bird ranges across the continent, from the low Arctic to the subtropics. 50,000 pairs breed in eastern North America. Both great and double-crested cormorants nest in this colony, and they've similar breeding behavior. Once a mate is chosen, the birds prepare for egg-laying, an activity that fuses nest construction and courtship into a ritual of growing physical intimacy. Building materials are hard to get, so any unattended nest is quickly torn apart. To prevent pilfering, both male and female defend their site from other cormorants. Copulation occurs quickly when the male mounts the female. A pair mate frequently over a number of days, ensuring the eggs are fertilized. Both species of cormorant lay a clutch of from 3 to 6 eggs, which are incubated continuously for about 30 days before they hatch. Cormorants share remote offshore islands with other breeding seabirds that require protected sites and nearby fishing grounds. Such places are rare, and birds will return every year in spite of repeated human disturbance. People close to a breeding colony often do no direct harm, but they can still have a severe impact through an unintentional alliance with the gulls. Gulls scavenge for food littering the colony. They'll also eat eggs and young chicks. But the cormorants are attentive guardians, and this rarely happens. But disturbance caused by a nearby fishing boat or an intruder on land panics cormorants and gulls into flight. The gulls return more quickly and invade the cormorant's nesting area. Gull predation is amplified by garbage and fishery wastes, an artificial food supply that supports an exploding gull population. This destructive combination is becoming a serious problem for many colonially breeding seabirds along our Atlantic coast. When a pair loses their eggs, they copulate and lay again. But even so, a late start means offspring are less likely to be ready when winter comes. During May and June, spawning fish school in immense numbers along the coast and at river mouths. Cormorants concentrate where prey is most abundant and accessible from their breeding colonies. While cormorants fish the rivers, young Atlantic salmon swim downstream to the sea. The cormorants are often blamed for depleting this endangered commercial species, yet in eastern North America, all studies show that under natural conditions, salmon and trout are only a tiny part of their diet. In both salt and fresh water, cormorants feed mostly on fish of no commercial value. After fishing, cormorants must find a perch and dry off. They're less waterproof than other diving seabirds, but this isn't a liability. Porous feathers allow water to soak through and drive trapped air out, enabling the birds to sink and dive easily. Vigorous wing flapping traps air within the feathers, renewing lost buoyancy and insulating against cold water. By mid-June, the eggs are hatched at this colony on Prince Edward Island. Newborn chicks are naked, blind, and can't regulate their body temperature. One parent must constantly shelter them from the rigors of the environment. At a week old, chicks can see and are strong enough to beg for food. The parent regurgitates partially digested fish, which the chick takes from the parent's mouth and gullet. When not brooding young, cormorants often preen. Feathers are oiled, combed, and cleaned, maintaining insulation against wet and cold. These dark birds also overheat quickly in direct sunlight. By panting and fluttering the throat pouch, they increase airflow, which cools their blood. As chicks acquire these adaptations, they become less vulnerable to natural stresses. These cormorants have also learned to tolerate considerable human disturbance. But the birds can neither detect nor respond to the insidious danger of pesticides sprayed on the potato fields above them. Toxic chemicals can leach into the water, concentrating in fish cormorants eat and feed to their young. Excessive pesticide levels in the marine environment cause high egg and chick mortality, a threat to survival against which cormorants have no defenses. The mackerel trap at first appears to benefit the breeding cormorants. 10 tons of fish may be schooling within the nets, a concentrated artificial food supply that attracts an assortment of marine predators. The mackerel trap is not selective, capturing whatever swims across its path. Creatures become accidentally entangled, and this attracts scavengers. Gulls both scavenge and steal from the cormorants, who prey on fish schooling in the trap. Cormorants can dive to a depth of 50 meters, but usually stay under for a minute or less. Gulls watch the water. They're ready to pounce on any cormorant that surfaces with a fish. Increased competition offsets the advantage of this abundant food supply for the cormorants. But the mackerel trap creates a much more serious danger than thieving gulls. Cormorants eat the catch and chase fish into the netting. Although damage is localized and small, the birds are commonly viewed as pests that should be destroyed at their nesting colonies. Sometimes angry fishermen take the law into their own hands. This colony is safe from illegal attack, even though it's in a very vulnerable place. These birds thrive because they nest in plain view of so many people. Most cormorants aren't so lucky. They nest in remote areas where there are no potential witnesses. The cormorant's excrement kills trees, another excuse to destroy the birds, although offshore island forests are stunted and of little commercial value. Human persecution is now the major cause of cormorant mortality, as a recent news clip demonstrates.
5 weeks ago, there was a thriving cormorant colony on this island in Mahone Bay. Today, the ground is littered with shotgun shells and the remains of young cormorants. There were only 2 birds in the colony. They're too young to fly away. The cormorant is a protected bird, but law enforcement is pretty lax, and no one has been prosecuted in recent memory. Claude Vickery, CBC News, in Mahone Bay.
Protected by their public location, survival for these offspring hinges mainly on the available food supply. Appetites grow quickly, and by a month old, each chick eats nearly as much as an adult. When fish are very abundant, all the chicks of a large brood will get enough to eat. But normally, only the older and stronger will survive. As chicks approach adult size, they can't be contained in their own nesting places. This leads to frequent disputes, and the colony becomes a more stressful environment. At about 2 months old, juvenile feathers cover the wings and body, and the birds are ready to make their first flight to the waters below the colony. The adults make an accurate landing look easy, but it takes a lot of practice for the young birds. As the juveniles continue to mature physically, they also develop more pronounced adult behavior, at times appearing to mimic their parents. Juveniles continue to beg for food, but have to be increasingly persistent as the family bond slowly dissolves. This playful interaction helps perfect skills needed to capture fast, darting prey. At 14 weeks of age, usually around the end of August, all parental ties are broken, and juveniles are dependent on their own abilities to survive. Fall is an easy time for both juveniles and adults. The perils of the breeding season are over. The sea teems with fish. The air is still warm. Winter is the next critical period. Great cormorants stay along North Atlantic shores and must endure harsh weather. Double-crested cormorants make an arduous migration, flying as far south as the Gulf of Mexico. When the cormorants return to their nesting colonies in Atlantic Canada, they'll again face an uncertain future. Persecution is increasing, laws are not enforced, and there's pressure from fishing interests to reduce the birds to a tiny remnant population. But people, not cormorants, take the largest catch from Atlantic waters. And people, not cormorants, have caused the serious depletion of some commercial fish stocks. We're forever looking for scapegoats to blame for the damage done by human activities. Destroying innocent wildlife won't solve complex economic and environmental problems. The roots of those problems are much closer to home.
Next on The Nature of Things with David Suzuki, defending ourselves against the dangers of fire.